done this, holding a pre-session for our Hot Firm and AE Industry Awards Conference. So we'll have a really big kickoff tomorrow, but thanks for attending this. And I know we've also had some people that may not be attending that, which is great. We love that, fantastic. Definitely, I know that everybody here has a mix of backgrounds in terms of the industries that they're working in, as well as, experience level. We've got some very senior level, very experienced marketers, and also some people that are a little bit newer to the industry and younger, which is great. This is definitely the kind of session where everybody should feel free to jump in, say something, have a discussion. We want everybody to be able to learn from each other as well. So this is not just us standing up here, presenting and making it real boring. So please jump in, share. If you disagree, if you agree, whatever, let us know. We'll have a short break in the middle. We've got some refreshments in the back, just some light snacks and some drinks. So, and feel free to, get up and get anything if you need something at any time. We also have some people that are coming in that may be a bit late, so just expect that. This is Steve Thomas. You may know him as the former host of This Old House, but he has a ton of experience both in terms of working in the built environment, but also in branding and being a TV host. So he knows it better than anyone. He really has a long history. He's worked through a lot of brand evolutions and seen the way brands change over time. And I think he has a lot of valuable wisdom to share with us. He was a keynote speaker last year at Hot Firm, and he'll be here throughout the next 3 days as well. So without further ado, Steve Thomas.
Thank you. I mean, you don't need this, but they want to record it, so they're making us use the microphone. So I apologize for that. So my experience in branding really is experience. I don't have any book learning in branding at all. I was the host of This Old House for 14 years. This Old House was sold to Time Warner, and then Time Warner merged with AOL. And so I watched the creation of this core brand, and then the challenge to the coreness of the core brand, and then the dissolution of the brand. And then we did a whole bunch of documentaries, full-length documentaries for the History Channel over the next 4 years, and those were really hardcore, very good documentaries. We got nominated for a Peabody for one of them, and so that was kind of an exercise in maintaining a really strong brand. Then Discovery launched Planet Green, which was a 24/7, 365 green channel. This was at the height of the green frenzy, and asked me to do a show for them called Renovation Nation. And so we actually launched this whole Planet Green brand. So all the insight, such as it is, I have about brands comes from, actually being in the trenches and working on developing them. So with that, I thought I would just sort of go through. I mean, I'm not going to. Some of you know a lot more about branding than I do, so I'm not going to teach you anything. So this is more of a personal sort of exploration of brand. So brand's original meaning is literally, branding a cow. And there are some states in which most states, in fact, they require that you have some brand on your cow. And this was in Rockport, Maine. There was a small herd of cows, those belted Galloways, and I said, wow, there's a brand. So I took a picture of it. So branding in its most core sense means you name your cow and you can identify your cow. So it's useful, and if you Google brands, there's a Pinterest board for brands, there's all kinds of stuff for old Texas ranch brands and so on and so forth. It's kind of an art form, but it's useful to keep the original meaning of brand in mind as we explore brands. So what do brands do? Well, and this is stuff you guys all know, but it's useful to kind of review it. Transform the generic into the specific. Get yourself to stand out from everybody else that's doing similar things. Second thing is to attract customers and revenue. So that's what branding is all about. So it's everything that you do or don't do to cause your product and service to stand out. whether you do it actively or inactively, you're still building your brand. So it's better to build your brand actively than just let it sort of evolve and happen of its own. Everything can be branded. Everything can be differentiated, and usually is. You can buy a sack of oats, a great big sack of steel-cut oats at the Agway, and it's, you know, $50 for the whole bag, or you can pour that same sack of oats into a nice can and call it Scottish oatmeal and sell it for, you know, $6 or $8 a pound. Same stuff. That's branding. So that's what you want to do. So if you Google brand, you'll get a gigantic Wikipedia explanation of what brand is, but basically it's just what we've been saying. The term has evolved to give a product an identity. You want to attach to it certain qualities that make people want to buy it, to defend their purchase of the brand, to recommend it to their friends, and to come back for more. That's really what it is. Big international brands, you look at any one of these logos, you know exactly what they mean, exactly what they sell, and they've all been supported and promulgated by extensive PR efforts, big branding efforts, and you know all of these companies are focused on brand. This is my friend Charlie Cincerbo, being a goofball in Hawaii. But if you look behind the picture, brands are all around us all the time. Spam is, you know you've made it as a brand when you become the core of a skit done by Monty Python. So spam, 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 spam. Everybody knows about spam. Cheerios right there. Everybody knows Cheerios. And then Mauna Kea is that really nice hotel on the Big Island of Hawaii. And otherwise, it's just a white T-shirt, right? It's just a plain white T-shirt that you can buy at the Gap for $5 on sale. And you put Mauna Kea on it, it suddenly becomes something really cool. It confers upon the person wearing it the cool qualities of Mauna Kea, and it says to everybody who sees you that you're a cool person because you've got your Mauna Kea shirt on. So the power of branding is everywhere, all the time, all around us. So one of my friends who was the co-president at Burton Snowboards, and by the way, Burton Snowboards does not make their living selling snowboards. They make their living selling clothing. The clothing is branded Burton, and it's made in the same factories in China that Patagonia and Columbia and everybody else makes their factories. It's all contract manufacturing of clothing in China. But so Burton clothing is all about brand. The margins are tremendous. The snowboards really drive the brand and the brand development and the brand messaging, but it's all about active outdoor lifestyle for people that are generally 22 and younger. And he said, look, the one thing you got to understand, you know, he got really interested. We were talking about the whole This Old House evolution and how the core brand of This Old House became dissipated. And he said, yeah, there's this difference between core brands and mass market brands. If you have a core brand like This Old House, you want to keep it a core brand. And trying to transition that to a mass market brand is fraught with danger. So it's worth keeping that in mind as we continue this exploration of how to brand and how to maintain your brand. Core brands, mass market brands. McDonald's in the restaurant space, obviously mass market. Brother Freddy's in Florida is a core brand. Dairy Queen in the Dairy Queen space is mass market brand. Dairy Corner, this is in Bell Center, Iowa, is a core brand. In the clothing space, Patagonia, founded by Yvon Chouinard. He's like the man. He's a famous climber. He invented a lot of the, he started out, he's a guy from Lewiston, Maine, who became a really famous climber, and he started making a lot of the equipment, the rock climbing equipment, then branched into clothing as kind of a second thought, but Patagonia is a core brand. Tommy Hilfiger makes a lot of the same stuff, but if you were going to go helicopter skiing in Alaska, you probably wouldn't show up wearing Tommy Hilfiger. You'd probably show up wearing Patagonia because, you know, if the helicopter can't get back to you and you have to sleep on the mountain, then you'd probably rather be in something that's really going to work. So core brands, mass market brands. So the proposition that I want to extend is that everybody in our space is a core brand. We're all core professional brands. So we should keep that in mind, and I include myself, as we practice our brand. And branding, by the way, is a discipline and not something you do once in a while. You know, you need to work on branding all the time. And it's hard because it takes energy, it takes money, it takes an investment, and so on. It's not like, and you know, I'm as bad as anybody else. I do it episodically. So brands must be clear and direct. When you look at a brand, like all those other brands that we looked at, you have to know, yeah, I get it. This is why we were at the IBS one year, International Builders Show, and one of the food trucks out there is the Fuck You burger truck. And I thought, wow, what do they do? And so if you, I mean, they sell burgers, and it's Get Lucky, and it's kind of, I actually Googled these guys, and they pop right up. So it's a Japanese American fusion burger. And the kanji characters mean different things. It means flood, it means a bunch of different things depending on how the character is drawn or presented or something like that. But anyway, in terms of brand clarity, it's not clear at all what Fukyu is, except Get Lucky and so on. So brand clarity is important. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 5 years in Africa and in the United States. Habitat works very hard on maintaining the clarity of their brand. Habitat for Humanity, everybody sees Habitat and they know, okay, I know what these guys do. You know, they build houses for people, with people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford a house, whether it's in Kenya or Detroit or doesn't matter where. So the affinity for a brand like Habitat, and for all of our brands really, affinity is really important. You want people to want to associate with your brand. You want them to wear the t-shirts. You want them to sign up for your services and so on. That's an important part of extending and maintaining your brand. You know, I'm an example of somebody who wanted to become associated with Habitat for Humanity, wear the shirt. This is in Kenya on a project we were doing over there. So this is a guy who took it a little too far, maybe. He had the whole Habitat thing tattooed on his shoulder. I guess it's a hammer that's bleeding the blood of Christ onto Habitat for Humanity, and he's got the Home Builders Blitz thing. But when we were, this was in, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember where this was. And he very proudly showed me this. So brand affinity is a very powerful thing, powerful enough for some people to cause them to go get tattooed. So Habitat has a number of affiliated programs. National Women Build is one of them. Cars for Homes is another one. Professional Home Builders Blitz is another one. That was that shot that you saw. And this is all stuff that we all know, but it's all about affinity marketing. Habitat's the core brand. The related brand is Women Build. And then Lowe's is the sponsor for Women Build. And so all of the branding on all the clothing for the whole National Women's Build week, which is right around Mother's Day, is all Lowe's. You know, they all have Cobalt hammers. Cobalt is the brand that Lowe's bought and turned it into their own brand. So from their point of view, having pictures like this on social media and regular media is absolute gold because their whole focus in their constant war with Home Depot is to make sure that they have the upper hand in grabbing the female women. They target all their marketing and everything else and try to make their stores women friendly. If my wife goes off and wants to get something, last thing she wants to do is walk into Home Depot or, God forbid, the lumber yard where I go. She'll go into Lowe's because they really have built their brand strategy around targeting females. So talk a little bit about brand evolution and brand control. And this is something that, so my career goes back to the early 80s. I started my career at PBS in documentary television, old-fashioned documentary television. We'd load up, head off for 3 months with cameras and film cameras and film stock, never to be seen again, and come back with a bunch of film and then turn it into a film. So it really was old-fashioned documentary filmmaking. So back in the day, there were 3 networks in PBS. In records, there were record labels who were responsible for selecting the artists and recording them and distributing. the records, and then you had newspapers and magazines that pretty much controlled, all the flow of news. And they had a lock on the market. So all of that has now been completely disintermediated by mobile devices. Can I grab your phone for a sec? These things. The impact of these is huge. And tablets, everybody's got a tablet, everybody's got a laptop. The impact, and with ubiquitous cellular connection and Wi-Fi connection, the impact is huge. And the impact is huge in general, but it's really huge on brand. So this is the very first year I joined this old house. So I had graduated from high school at that point. And I did have a driver's license. So they made me shave my beard. It was interesting. I had this great big beard. I'd been sailing all over the world. And so I was renovating my house in Salem, Massachusetts. And I just finished the last Navigator film, this film that I was talking about where we went off to the Pacific and studied traditional navigation using stars, waves, and birds. And so our publicist calls up and she says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm renovating my house." She said, "Oh, I didn't know you did that kind of stuff. You should talk to the guys at this old house. They're looking for a new host." I said, "Wow." And she said, "But you travel a lot, so, they probably wouldn't be a good fit for you." So my wife comes home from work and she said, "What?" I said, "Go apply for that job." I said, "They're not going to hire me." She said, "They're going to hire somebody. Go interview." So I walk in and I interview, and they say, "Oh, it's pretty good. Come back for a screen test." Now, 412 people had applied for this job. They were looking at 412 people from all over the country. So I walk in with this great big beard, having just gotten off this expedition to Micronesia. And I did the screen test, and they said, "Well, the screen test is pretty good." So they called me up and said, "Would you be willing to shave your beard?" I said, "What? Your beard? You look a lot like Norm. You guys look like the Smith brothers." So I said, "Yeah, I'll shave my beard." So come in for another interview. So I go in for another interview. I didn't shave my beard, but I got a Bic razor and I stuck it in my pocket and went through the interview. And they said, "Well, you got the job. We think you can handle it." So that's when I shaved my beard. And then the week later, they took this picture. So anyway, the point is no control over everything. Not what I wore, not where it was, not how I looked. You had no control over your brand or your brand imaging at all. A few years later, I looked a little more, at home and at ease, and had the deal going, the swagger and the comfort and the confidence. And then they finally let me wear a tool belt. So all this stuff was controlled, is the point. And then even later on, when I did Renovation Nation on Planet Green, I had no control over that. Not the colors, not the typeface, not how you're presented, nothing. But at least, I'm there with Leonardo DiCaprio and a couple of really gorgeous young women. So that's not so bad. But that has, and then some of the publicity early on, no control whatsoever. Everybody, was in fear of how the newspapers, how they were going to be presented in the media, because you had no control. We launched This Old House magazine. And again, they said, "Well, we're going to put you on the cover. That's the good news, but we want you to wear brand new boots, and we got a brand new wheelbarrow." I said, all my stuff's old. I mean, no tradesman would be using brand new stuff like this, and you wouldn't show up in boots to rake the lawn. They said, we're not in the business of making you look good. We're in the business of selling tools that our advertisers are selling. So just go out there and do it, will you? And we'll be friends. I mean, that was the conversation. So later on, as I got a little bit more clout, this is a recent thing that was in Maine Boats, Harbors, and Homes. Said, so I want the cover, and I wasn't nasty about it, but I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. So the control of brand is now, that thing is whole shifted. So everybody in this room has control of our brand, of the imaging, of the distribution, of the pictures, of the everything. You've got control of everything. So this is huge. The good thing is that you have control. The bad thing is that you have to, you have to ride the horse. The horse is gone, and if you don't ride it, it's going to ride you. So that means all of us, and I include myself, have to focus on the maintenance, the building and the maintenance of brand. Don't take my word. Tom Peters, Fast Company, we're all the CEOs of our own company, Me Too Inc., and so on and so forth. So this is a big change. This is the first time any of us have been able to do this. So one of the things that so the iPhone just came out with a new, Apple just came out with a new iPhone. And the camera's supposed to be unbelievable. It's supposed to be really good. So much so that the professional photographer friends that I have say, you know, if you want a camera, just buy an iPhone. And one of the famous photographers, I can't remember who it was, said, the best camera in the world is the one that you've got with you, because it's all about capturing the moment. And recently in Maine, there was, it was in down east, I think, the cover shot was a shot of a lobsterman early in the season. It was just one of those moments that you couldn't capture unless you had a camera in your pocket. And it was shot on a Galaxy or something like that. Made it to the cover of the magazine. So this is a thing that I did for DIY a long time ago. Obviously staged, everything's staged, it's all managed. And you look at it and you say, okay, but it's all managed. So, you know, I'm used to that. That doesn't get my attention. You look at this and you say, who is this guy? And what is he doing? This is a selfie. Just, you know, thought, hey, I'll be a dope and take a picture of myself. Why not? You know, but it's a good picture. It's like, what's going on here? This is one my wife took. This is our house, our current house, that I bought for $200,000, and within the first 2 weeks rendered it valueless because I ripped it all apart. The sills were rotten and everything else. And you reach this point in any renovation project where it's like, what am I doing? I know better, but here I am. But you know, capturing the authenticity of the moment is now more important than ever in terms of brand image and brand promulgation. You can't get by with stock images anymore, and you can't get by without a lot of images. It's really image-driven, and it's not so much print-driven. So that's a big change. So when we're thinking about articulating our professional brands, whether it's an individual practice or a group practice or a large corporation, we're all in the service business. You know, I build houses and renovate houses, and I do, you know, films as well, but it's still a service. Everybody else in our industry is in some form of service. So authenticity is key. Visuals are key. Brief, simple, and direct statement of brand, purpose, mission, and is really important. And sustainability is also important. By sustainability, what I mean is that the core of your brand should be endurable. You should be able to recreate it. You should be able to refresh it every couple of years and have it still work. So brands go through, like everything, you go through growth, maturity, and then it starts to get stale, and you need to refresh it at that point. Growth, maturity, you need to refresh it at that point. And what's interesting is that these cycles are getting shorter and shorter all the time. You know, people just get bored because the volume of imagery is so quick, and there's so much stuff out there in social media and otherwise, you need to kind of evolve it all the time. It's like yoga, you know, you need to practice every day, which I don't. So I needed to do a refresh. And keeping in mind branding is a discipline, this is something that I should do a lot more often, but don't. Probably something we should all do a lot more often, and we need to get in the habit and commit the resources to do that so that we can, you know, keep our businesses growing. So I had 3 websites, Steve Thomas Home, Steve Thomas Builders, and Maine's Wild Islands. Maine's Wild Islands is a feature-length documentary film that we're doing on the Maine Islands National Wildlife Refuge. And it's a big, full-length, 120-minute nature documentary, you know, with lush photography and underwater photography. It's a big deal. And a group of us in Maine these guys work all over the world for Discovery and National Geographic and so on. We just all got together and said, you know, let's do this. So it fell to me to sort of, you know, do all the branding and the website development for all this stuff. So the other distinction to make is there are 2 general kinds of websites, and I focus on websites, and Christy will talk about social media in a sec, because you need a home base, I think, anyway. A website is like your curriculum vitae. I mean, we used to spend a lot of time making sure our CVs were up to date, but your CV now is your website. It's not, you know, yeah, you got a Facebook page and a Twitter feed and all that kind of stuff, but still, you know, when you say, here's my business card, and that's the other interesting thing, is that print is not dead. Print still works. And Maine's Wild Islands, we did a brochure, and people still say, wow, that's cool, can I have one of those? And you hand it to them. You still have, everybody carries a business card, right? And you still hand out your business card. So the two go together. But anyway, we have portfolio websites, most of us, unless you're doing e-commerce, but most of us are not. So the distinction between portfolio websites and transactional websites is important to make. So when I decided to bite the bullet and refresh my website, I pulled out all my old brand imaging. This was something that I did 20 years ago. It was a big deal back then. You had to go find a graphic artist. He or she did some stuff for you. You went and got it printed, and it was all, you chose the colors, and this is reflex blue and all that kind of stuff. Well, now it's totally different. I mean, it happens really quick. You can do it on your computer, and Vistaprint can print it up, and you'll get it in 3 days. So we did decide to, these were sort of friends of friends, and they said, hey, we'll do a logo and brand sort of exploration for you, just because we like you, and we'll do it really cheap. I said, great, really cheap's important, because I don't want to spend much money on this. And so they came up with a portfolio of logos and images that express Steve Thomas builders. So that's cool, I get that. I like the colors, and that's pretty good. That one doesn't really fit me, but I like it. It's all well done. Could certainly live with any of them. You could live with any of them. This looks like if I was working in Arizona or Texas or down in the Southwest someplace, this one might work. And this one's like, yeah, that's kind of more closer to who I am and what I do, and that is my house, so that it had that old house, this old house kind of feel to it. It said, we'll go sort of that direction. This is like, nah, I don't think so. I mean, I'd like to build that house, but that's not who I am. So, and this was, yeah, if I was doing lofts in Fishtown in Philadelphia, I'd definitely go this direction. But that other one seemed to resonate. So it's worth doing some logo exploration and paying for it. You have to pay for it. Because, and it's like anything. I mean, everybody's in the design business here, and we urge our customers to use our services as professionals, so why are we trying to do it yourself? You need to reach outside and get a different take on it. So the one we came up with, then they suggested, with the signature, that didn't really fit. But this one stuck. This one's like, yeah, I like that. It's a certain Pantone color. It's still the blue, but it's an uptick from the reflex blue. It just kind of, the whole thing worked. It's straightforward. It seemed to express the Steve Thomas brand. So that's what we went with. So then the next thing was to look at analogous websites. I really didn't know what to do. We'd built 2 websites, but every time you do it, it's like you're reinventing the wheel. For me, it was a brand that was named after a person that had a history in television and elsewhere, and people knew, but needed to be reminded of, and also needed to be reminded that I also build. I don't just do television and keynote speaking and stuff like that. So I cast it around and finally came upon Clodagh. She's a designer in New York, big firm, works all over the world. Check out her website. If you did Clodagh, and in fact, we do have good Wi-Fi. Everybody's got Wi-Fi here, so I won't take it as being rude if you pull up some of these websites, and we'll pull up some of my websites. But Clodagh's got a great website, and she does a lot of really good stuff. But it's a firm named after a person, and her stamp is all over it. So she's a little bit different than Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is a firm named after a person. Martha's sort of whole business model evolved to drive product sales. That's what it was all about. Everything from towels to cookware and so on and so forth. Clodagh is still service. It's still her personality, and her design aesthetic is still there to support the firm and the design firm, and they do it all over the world. So, I kind of looked at what she had done. She'd done everything from social responsibility, which she calls philanthropomania to, she does have some products and projects and so on and so forth. So that was a good analog. I said, okay, I can work with that. I can steal some ideas from that. There's another builder in my area, Coal Mountain Builders, and I just noticed when I was putting the show together, they have the same Pantone color that I chose. That was total happenstance. You know, they're high-end, super high quality, high touch, all that kind of stuff. Just as a side note, both of these websites use a lot of flash. And what Christy and I were talking earlier, and anybody jump in if you have any observations, but you know, the rule 5 years ago was you have to have flash. Everything has to have flash. And now it's like, I don't want flash. I want it to load quick. I want it to be able to be load quick on any device, on any network connection or cellular connection, and it's got to be able to scroll. So you got to get from the beginning to the end really quick, sort of sample the menu items, and then you go back and pick and choose. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So these guys both had a lot of flash. They're also really menu driven, which I hate. You know, it's now we're used to scrolling through on our mobile device or even on our tablets or even on our laptops, and then boom, you hit it. I mean, my wife picks up her computer now, and she's trying to poke the screen. It's like, no. She says, oh yeah, right, it's a tablet. It's not a tablet. So our tablets and the devices have very much changed the way we access information. And if we access information differently, then we have to present the information differently, which means we have to generate it in a different way. So it has to be, you know, the core of it can be the same, but the way it's generated and presented has to be different, and it has to be optimized for the device at the end of the day. So this is Phi. This is another builder up in our area. I really didn't like their website at all. I mean, their work is good and all that. They got a good reputation, but totally left me cold. So here's what we came up with, and I didn't build this site myself. Let's see, you want to transition to live here? Let's escape out of this. If you want to just go to Steve Thomas Builders. You gotta get it. Yeah, go to Builders. Okay. So the way I built these was I pulled together the pictures, and you know, I have a ton of pictures, and again, so they have to be, it can't be too produced looking. It's got to be authentic. And then I used a couple of website developers. They're kids, friends of my son in Montana, and they were great. And I wanted a different sensibility. I wanted somebody to tell me, you know, you're thinking like an old fogey. You don't have to think that way anymore. This works. This totally works. And that was great. I enjoyed that. But you still have to, I'm still the guy who has to create the brand and articulate the brand, come up with the pictures, and as a film producer, come up with a flow. So this thing, it all scrolls. You get to the bottom and the top, and whether you do it on your mobile device or on your laptop, it's the same. And then you can click out into you know, the various branches of it. So some sort of a thesis statement was really important. Clota had that, and I picked it up from her. Coal Mountain Builders had it too. And so I thought, and I didn't want it too flowery. It's got to really feel authentic. So since this was a personal brand that was a building services company, basically, builders and renovators, building and renovation is not just a job, it's a passion. You know, when we show up on your job site, we show up, I show up. And, you know, we give it our all. We're there full time, full on, we're there. And a kind of a brand statement was important as well. And so that came in terms of core values. So a little bit about Steve Thomas. And, you know, I really sort of tossed this around and came up with a bunch of flowery stuff and threw it away. And then just came up with something that's really simple and direct. I mean, the authenticity thing is really important. You've got to clearly and briefly state who you are, why you exist, what you do, and let your potential customer, your viewer, decide, I'm going to go with these guys because I just like the cut of their jib. They seem, you know how you meet people, right? You meet people, and some people, it's almost as if you can like put your hand through them. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't really get you. I don't get it. And then other people, maybe this happens when you get older. I don't know. But other people, it's like, okay, that person's solid. I mean, have you experienced that? Yeah. It's like, got it. You're a real person. I mean, this is not, there's nothing woo-woo about this. It's just, a friend of mine in the investment business said investments like that we call them a box that rattles. You pick up the box, it looks good, everything's good, and it's like, I don't know, something rattling in there. So people pick up a box that rattles really quick, and everything that they see about you and your brand and your website, everything that touches them has to be direct. So core values, okay. I just written an article about this. Simplicity, integrity, and sustainability. So this page I can rip out tomorrow, put in new imagery, new pictures, rearrange it, but the core values won't change. So the sustainability part of branding is, I think anyway, that the expression of your brand can change, the messaging of your brand can evolve, but the core has to stay the same. I mean, if you look at Patagonia, you know, the quality of the clothing that's well designed, you can take it to the Arctic, you can take it fly fishing in Patagonia, you know, you can go helicopter skiing in Alaska, whatever, the core values are all the same. And then they have environmental stuff and all that. He started 1% for the planet, so he puts his money where his mouth is. So that's that. Your home is your castle. It sounds corny, but it's like, no, that's true. That really is true. And so this is a statement that, you know, what I came up with was, you know, your house doesn't have to be elaborate, but it has to be real. And that's what it's all about. So pictures tell everything. This little picture panel doesn't activate, it doesn't go anywhere, but it just gives little windows into all the different stuff we do. And all seasons, you got to look at it. Each picture tells a story, everybody knows that. Can't be generic. It really helps to, I mean, it's essential. It doesn't help. It's essential that you go out and take pictures that are particular to your business, your team, what your customers, and that can be kooky. I mean, in some cases, that's even better if they tell a story. They have to tell a story, whatever it is. And then you're into the projects, and you know, you can go off to these various projects and then dive into more projects and so on and so forth. So people love pictures. They love to see stuff. At the end of the day, you know, they want to see the pictures and how it came to be. You tell a little story, not too long, the story of this particular cottage, and then you've got a call to action. So and they're pretty simple websites, but they're deceptively simple because all the links have to lead back, the whole thing has to tell a story, it has to feel like you've had a whole experience. Most people aren't going to go through the whole thing. They'll scroll through it sometime when they're waiting in an airport or something like that. I'll say, oh, I'll check out that website again. That was pretty cool. So that's Steve Thomas Builders. And then, thank you. The disadvantage of bifocals. They're not really bi. I just can't see anything. I don't have my reading glasses on. So Steve Thomas home, I had to redo this. Same format. So this is in Squarespace. So a lot of the format is driven by Squarespace, which is okay, because you need kind of a template, I think. But same sort of idea. There's a simpler website. This just clicks out to Steve Thomas Builders. This goes to, and then I'm on the board of Life Flight of Maine, so the philanthropic stuff is really important. I think every firm or every individual has to have some, you have to give back to the community in some way, shape, or form. And I think anyway that customers look at that, and that's the deciding factor. If you don't give back in any way, shape, or form, and all things being equal, they'll choose your competitor over you because, you know, at the end, my dad, who never voted for a Democrat in his whole life, told me when I was in high school or college, he said, the purpose of capitalism is to make society a better place. And it's the job of capitalism to solve social problems as well as economic problems. And I thought, wow, that's a really profound thing for somebody as stupid as my father, you know, because I knew everything at that point in life because I was in college, you know, but that has rung true with me. And I think it's ringing true with our customers now, and I think it's important not only for your customers, but also for recruiting the next cadre of people who are going to work for you to see that, you know, we're not just about making money, but we're about doing work that's really good, that's excellent, and we're about treating our employees like partners, and we're about giving back to our community. That has to come sort of seeping through all your branding, in my opinion. So Maine's Wild Islands is the other one I built, and I'll just show you this. This is interesting because it's totally different. This is this documentary film we're working on. We needed a website so people could see what we were up against, up to and up against. And we also wanted to have a place where they could contribute. It goes to a, whoa, hello. And we shot a trailer for Maine's Wild Islands. We needed a place to run the trailer. So a lot of the things that I've been talking about, authenticity and roughness and so on, grittiness to cut through the clutter, will come out in this little trailer we shot. So check this out. Hi, I'm Steve Thomas. It's January 20th, and the weather is incredibly good. Rockland Harbor is there. So the idea here was that we were going to use this to raise the rest of the money for the film and carry it around on a laptop or whatever and show it to potential donors, funders. So we wanted it to be ambiguous. So the first shot is, who are these guys, where they're going, what are they doing? And the weather is incredibly good. Rockland Harbor is there, we're headed off to Seal Island. This is day one of a documentary on the wild islands of Maine. Totally unscripted. There's not a script.
I'm kind of in awe of this now because I thought we were just going to see seals today. I have never seen this many.
I know.
Place.
All the traveling you've done all over the world.
Well, you go to Alaska and see something. You know, you think that's where you go to see a lot of eagles. I've never seen anything like this. It's incredible.
This is a lot of eagles.
So people say, wow, this looks like Planet Earth. I say, yeah, that's because the guy who shot Planet Earth shot this.
There's this group of seals right now that is hanging out together swimming, and that when I go in the water, hopefully they'll take advantage of their group in numbers and come up close and get curious. This is the most important part. This is hot water, so we'll pour that in the wet gloves.
past that blue block there, and then there's one by that in that little pond. Is the only place. Wherever we go, there's a seal.
You lead the way, Michael.
Okay. Probably just
Stay
supposed
away
to
as
do
far
it,
as
get
I
it done,
can.
and
Right.
So we've got a female with a newborn pup. You can see the umbilical cord just a little on the pup. Hopefully the female will turn here and let it wean.
You want to set up here?
I was gonna head just there because I'm gonna have a hard time framing out all the woods. So I'm gonna go where these guys are on the ridge, just here.
Gray seals are normally solitary or they're in small groups for most of the year. And during the breeding, pupping season, they congregate in large groups. Females will normally come out, give birth, and stay out on shore for about 20 days. When female give birth, it's about 30 pounds, the pup, and it'll triple in size in a month. So this is the mother's milk is like 60% fat. If you go along shore, there are seals everywhere along the shore. We have a pup here. It doesn't have any white fur, so it's probably a month old, probably weaned off the female. So it's ready to learn how to fend for itself.
Let's get this baby in the air.
Come on. Maine is a place where the sea and the islands and the sky kind of mash together. It's a place of incredible beauty. And the wildlife is a critical part of that. And preserving it and celebrating it is really important. It's to come back to some place where you realize you're part of the natural world. You don't own the
I treasure every moment that I spend on an island like this just as much. First time I was out.
Last couple of years I've been in Iceland, Norway. This could be any of those places. This is just spectacular. Seal population here is amazing. I just didn't even realize this was right here in the backyard.
We're just going to switch to the version that is already loaded. There's only a minute left of this, which I think is going to solve the problem. Sorry, guys.
Last couple of years I've been in Iceland, Norway. This could be any of those places. This is just spectacular. Seal population here is amazing. I just didn't even realize this was right here in the backyard.
The predation, the life struggles, everything is here. It happens every day. We just got to spend the time and look at it and appreciate it, and then we'll conserve what we have here.
Something happens to you when you're out on an island. Your humanness shrinks in scope, and the importance of nature expands in scope.
This is the most amazing place, and it is such an honor to be here. Just another world. It is incredibly beautiful.
So if any of you would like to be executive producer of a film, the opportunity exists. Bring your checkbook and we'll set you right up. So a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about pertains to this little film. When we conceived of the, and this will pertain to the whole film. So the project is educational modules that'll be pushed out on the web, along with produced and finished segments like the one that you just saw. As we raise money, we'll go shoot these things and push them out on the web. And then it's a 1-hour PBS. PBS is already committed to running it. And then it'll be a feature-length doc, so that's 1 hour and 20 minutes. So that's kind of it's multiple products from the same film stock, if you will. When we sort of conceived of how the film would piece together, the idea was to have behind the scenes and in front of the scenes all the time. So you see the cameras and you see the booms and you see people being interviewed and you see getting to the islands. You see all that stuff. The crew, it used to be that all that stuff was behind the curtain and you just saw what was in front of the curtain. But that's different now. People want to see who's making it and what do they look like and what do they think about it and how do you get there and how do they work and see the gear and see the conditions and see the boat and all of that stuff. And then it's a mix of kind of handheld, as you saw, and drones. You have to have a drone and underwater. You need all these different perspectives and really long telephoto compressed shots. Everything's shot in high res. Everything's shot in 4K on Reds. So the resolution is really good. So there's a mixture of textures and styles. So what does that have to do with building a brand in our industry? You need that same mix of behind the scenes and front of the scenes. You need to meet the people that work for you and do the work. You need everybody from the C-suite to the people working in the trenches. You need that sense of here's the whole package. And it can be, it can have some rough edges, that's okay. But it has to be intentional. The whole package has to be intentional. So that's kind of my spiel. I'll turn it over to Ms. Zweig. Oh, right, the break, that part of it. You want to do questions at this point? Anybody? Questions, observations, complaints, requests for mixed drinks? Nothing. Yes, sir.
So I guess my question would simply be, knowing from far, not knowing in person, what has been your biggest challenge from not being typecast in your brand and being able to kind of, as life has presented new opportunities to jump out of the realm of just being that guy from this old house?
That is a great question. Everybody heard it, right? So, I don't know the answer is the problem. I think it goes back to branding is a habit. You know, you have to. I was worried about that when I left this old house. Actually, I was terrified that I was going to be a one-trick pony and nothing else would happen. I think whether it's an individual or a firm, you have to always be curious about what else. You know, what else can we do? You always have to be looking at how you can disintermediate your own services. You know, how do we make ourselves obsolete and reinvent ourselves within our existing shell? I've got a friend who has a company called spillcenter.com, and the website is not particularly spectacular, but what they do is anywhere in the world, if you're driving a tank truck or flying an airplane or whether you're FedEx or the U.S. Army or an oil company or anything else, if you have any kind of a spill, then you pick up your mobile device and you hit the app, and somebody calls you in your native language, whether it's Swahili or anything else, and says, your truck number 123, you're at this location because I have your latitude and longitude, what's the problem? So the success to his business is that he has disintermediated him. He's made himself obsolete. He's disintermediated himself 3 or 4 times now. And so I think the secret is to constantly reinvent your company, yourself. That starts with curiosity. That starts with being interested in what else is out there and what else can you do, and taking risks, and, you know, a lot of false starts. I mean, there's no sure deal. You know, I do a lot of stuff that I never get paid for. You know, I invest in things that never happen in terms of websites or, you know, various adventures. My wife is like, okay, here we go again. I get this one. But you have to do that for 2 reasons. One, to keep your brand and yourself moving, but also to stay engaged in life. Otherwise, it just really gets boring. You know, and at the end of the day, who cares about a new car? But a new chapter in life or a new project is really interesting. The other thing I would say, and I think this applies to firms as well as individuals, is that public service has been a huge, it's benefited me in ways that I never expected. I'm on the board of Life Flight of Maine, which is the only medical helicopter service in Maine. And it's a big board position. I don't have the checkbook to buy a new helicopter, but I am a working member of that board. You know, Life Flight of Maine touches every person in Maine, everyone. And that's really changed my whole perspective on what life is about, because there's a lot of people in Maine that wouldn't be alive if Life Flight didn't exist. It's not as easy philanthropy as it is for Maine Coast Heritage Trust or Booth Bay Botanical Gardens or one of the big 501c3s that set aside chunks of Maine, because it's medical. But getting engaged on a service level, philanthropic level, is also, I think, key. And that's key for an individual, and I think it's key for a firm as well, because it gives the firm life. Yes, sir. Stand up and speak up so we can all hear. Please.
Thanks for your endorsement of public service. I have a comment about branding too, it's relevant. But I am very concerned that we're heading down a path of diminishing the value of public service in this country, and I think we'll pay a deep price for that. I spent 23 years in the federal government, so I'm a little biased, but I think there's great value in what our public servants do, and we ought to be supporting them more than perhaps we do. And branding, one of the dynamics in our world right now, in the A&E world, is growing firms like mine. We're very active in the M&A world, and so we're acquiring firms that sometimes have a very solid brand, and so integrating that into our already good brand is always a challenge, and so we're working on that. And any ideas or thoughts on?
No, I'd like to hear yours. I think the audience would like to hear. You know more about it than I do.
My philosophy is, I take it from Mark Zweig, is rip the Band-Aid off and be surgical, and just do it. But you have to be very tactical and strategic about that as well. I mean, these are good brands that we're acquiring. At WGI, we have a solid brand that's growing nationally, and we want to preserve that and not dilute it, but also understand that the 100 people we're adding to our firm come from a firm with a really good brand too. So it's a challenge, and I think but I think at the end of the day, you got to just preserve the brand of the firm. And
I will say we actually use Michael Davis's brand firm, WGI, as an example later on in this session. So we'll go through that just a little bit. But the one thing that really stands out to me is what Steve was talking about, having those core principles. I don't think you all are acquiring firms who don't fit within your core principles. And they do have well-established brands as well, but what you're able to do is take the people from those other firms and immediately have them be able to relate right back to those core principles. And what I've seen you all do even on your Instagram, on your social media channels, is focusing on those people behind the scenes and how they relate to everybody else who works there. And I'll actually show you all some of the ways in which they've done that later. It's really an amazing strategy. It's an extremely consistent brand, probably one of the most consistent brands in the industry. And I think it's just because you all have such a good team that's even controlling all of that branding. You know what it is and you're consistent. And that's when we both talk about how branding is a discipline. It's about doing those same things. It's about having those standards, but having, you know, some flexibility and dynamic elements within that as well. And we'll show you a little more on that later.
Yeah, so just to say the same thing in a little bit different words, going back to the core principles of brand, that, you know, I struggled with that one page for a long time, and because I didn't understand it. And finally I said, okay, now I think I get it. It's that which endures. Everything else can change. But you wouldn't have bought these firms if the core values weren't the same, because it wouldn't work. If the core values are the same, then the expression of brand can be altered. So they can come into your organization because their core values are just the same. And that's the way to explain it, I think, to both everybody in the firm and to your customers.
I think it's a little more complicated than that.
I'm sure, but I'm in the...
Some firms don't have completely good brands, so it's easy. Other firms have a well-known brand, and it's more complicated and a little more nuanced.
So maybe we should come back to that a little bit later in the roll up your sleeves session. And do you want to take that on as the moderator of that piece of it? You just got volunteered, so the answer is yes.
I have a 3 o'clock meeting, so.
Well, I think we're out of here. Aren't we out? Are we out at 3 or 2? Or 4? 4, okay. All right. Anybody else?
As your brand and your message evolved, how were you accepting of that messaging evolution?
How accepting of the messaging evolution was I? Well, for me, and this is personal, I mean, it's because I'm a personal brand. It's weird to say, but it's true. It came down to curiosity. 2 things. Curiosity is the driver for all of this. But then people relate to stories. So if you explain how you got from where you were to where you are now, then people say, okay, I get it. So when I'm working with somebody on their house, I mean, this next project that I have is a friend of mine on an island in Maine said, just my house is falling. It's a house on an island, and the foundation is going. So he said, just take care of it. So I crawl around under there, and it's like, this is really bad news. So I said, look, I tell them the story. Here's what happened. When they first built it, they didn't do this, and over time, this happened, and then, you got a bunch of rot in the beams, and, he thought it was going to be a $5,000 project. It's going to be a $25,000 or $30,000 project. So you have to tell a story. And the stories are really powerful. In fact, they're probably the only thing that still has traction anymore, stories and images. So the images have to tell stories too. So and jump in here, please, because you've done this not just with your own company, but with other companies. It has to start with a story, which starts with curiosity, because you can't tell stories without being curious. Does that make any sense? How has that played out in your world, expanding through mergers and acquisitions?
Well, it is a story. I mean, anytime we buy a firm, they need to have a story. And so we're fortunate in that we actually, it plays out because we have a machine. We've invested in a very robust creative marketing machine to craft the story, craft the message, and help us understand how to deliver the message in a very effective way. But it's about the story. We bought a firm last year that did something that we did not do. They designed parking garages, they planned parking. Wasn't our that firm is no longer that firm. It's WGI Partner Solutions. This has worked pretty well.
I mean, the other thing I would say is that you have to have some measure of courage because it's like, think about all your favorite musicians. They've had an album or two where they've tried to go in a different direction. It just didn't work. But some things won't work. And you just say, okay, that didn't work. And you move on. Yeah. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Well, Steve was, talking about some larger concepts. I'm going to really dive into the specifics. Zweig Group, as you may know, we do a lot of research. We have 18 different research publications. One of them is our 2018 marketing survey of AEC firms, just released, I think, last month, end of July. And so I'm going to present some of the data that we have on that, particularly as it pertains to this industry's use of social media. And then I'm going to dive even more into the specifics with some case studies of actual firms that I think are doing an amazing job, and I'll show you why. Hopefully get some inspiration for everybody. And then from that point on, we will have a bit of a, we can talk about some specifics and we'll have more of a discussion. Okay? The first thing that I did, and this actually was not published, is I wanted to look at how is our industry using social media in comparison to some other industries. So we compared AEC industry's use of social media to real estate. So that's an industry that is somewhat closely aligned, both dealing with the built environment, somewhat construction, photography of structures, things of that nature, but obviously quite different in a lot of other ways. Still a service industry that is selling a product, which is a home. So you can see here, AEC industry is red, and gray is real estate. So looking at that, pretty big differences, especially Facebook up there. Almost 100% of people in the real estate industry are using Facebook, and this is for business use. AEC industry just at 62%. YouTube, and I think that some of that is due to some virtual tours and things of that nature. Again, something I think that actually our industry should be doing a lot more of. 74% there. Twitter, relatively even, and Instagram, again, way more. That's 72% of people in real estate are using it, and only 46% people in our industry. Also took a look at retail, so that's very different. But again, you can see these large differences here. Still, our industry, AEC industry, is definitely not embracing social media yet at all. Certainly not compared to other industries. In addition to just simply not using it, I also noticed some changes in the way in which, and I'll show you some data on that after this. So most firms are not engaging with their audience on social media. So even if they're on the platform, and that would have showed up in those previous statistics, what's not happening is the level of interaction. And instead it's, you can see, they're just posting something very infrequently, and then nothing is happening after that point. LinkedIn, most popular. Didn't even show up in those other stats, but I would say the majority, I think we're close to 90+% of AEC industry is on LinkedIn, so that's good. Though I will say that I think a lot of that is more of a personal brand coming through, and that's fine, that's great. If you have a strong firm leader, they're on LinkedIn, they're sharing things, they're liking, they're commenting, they're representing your firm, that's great. You also can have a company page as well, and that, as an actual platform, is a little bit more difficult to use, especially in terms of commenting and interaction standpoint. And I'll show you a little bit more of that later. So we asked firms, what are your activities when you're on these platforms? So in terms of actual retweeting things, so I think everybody here probably knows what that is. That's when you would take something that somebody else tweeted and reshare it again, maybe add your own comments. Our industry is still at only about 38%. So, and literally more than half the industry is never doing that at all. Sharing other people's stuff on Facebook, we're about 50-50. 42% said yes, 58% said no. Liking other firms or other people's things on Instagram, 78% said no. That is what the whole platform is about. It's about liking other people's stuff. It's about looking through what other firms are doing, what other people are doing, cool projects, cool pictures. It is not just about posting up your own thing and then walking away. And right there, we're at 22% said that they're doing some kind of interaction on that platform. And even on LinkedIn, which is, our industry's most favorite social media platform, still less than half are really doing any kind of interacting on there. That was for the company, yeah. So again, we looked a little bit more to some of these activities that are occurring on these platforms. Most firms are doing things like posting pictures, videos, podcasts. That's great. You can see that it's right there at the top. Second thing that most of the industry is using their social media platforms for is recruiting. And I hear this a lot in the industry. Okay, yes, we have social media channels. Yes, we have a website, but guess what? It's mostly for recruiting. The only reason we have it is so that people, I think it's only for people out there that might want to work for us. It's not for actually getting work. I've heard this from all ends of the industry. And I'm actually going to tell you today that I think that's kind of silly. And I think that it's a way in which we've pigeonholed ourselves, and it doesn't need to be that way. I'll show you some firms that are using it for other things very effectively. So again, AEC firms comfortable with using their social media, really just for posting things, recruiting, a little bit, they're trying to build a following, a little bit of, advertising sales, but in terms of communication, way down at the bottom. You see that there? I think it's just 20% is answering questions from clients and potential clients. And honestly, I think in reality, that's even less. This is just people that answered our survey. We also asked firms, what's working for you on your social media channel? And again, I think this is partially related to the activities that they're using it for, so you can't say they've done this perfect system, but what gets the most engagement? Pictures, blog posts, link back to the company blog, that's going back to your website, and then immediately we drop down to 9% videos. Very little cross-posting, very little other activities going on there. So we asked firms, how often are you using these platforms? And I already told you guys, not very often. I'm actually amazed at this data. Really not very often. So on this scale, 1 equals rarely, 2 equals monthly, and 3 equals at least twice monthly, but still less than weekly. So if a firm was at, if the average numbers on this were at 4, that would be weekly, and we're still below weekly on everything. So what I would compare this to would be, social media is like a party, okay? So we've got a party going on over here in this room, and it's whatever it is. There's a party, it's Instagram, it's over there. And it is filled with literally hundreds of thousands of people. And they're having their own conversations, there's music going on, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And here's what AEC firms are doing. They're walking across the hallway, they're walking into the room, they're putting up one little sign, this big, says one statement, and then they leave the room for 2 or 3 weeks. And then they're like, Instagram doesn't work for us. It's the same thing with all the social networks, especially if you look at something like Twitter. That's over here. Yes, it's the one that firms are using most frequently, but have you ever looked at your Twitter feed? If you have any kind of significant followers or you're following, that thing moves this fast. I mean, if you don't check that almost hourly, you are gonna lose out on messages and notification. Twitter is something that should be used daily at a minimum in order to be effective. Otherwise, your message is just gonna get lost. It's not something where people out there are going to your Twitter and then just scrolling down and trying to pick out the most important nuggets. It's something you've got to be right on top of those trends. On average, how much time is marketing department spending on social media? So this is no surprise given the statistics on the slide before. Most firms about an hour or less, and 2 to 4 hours. So I'm not by any means advocating that your marketing department just spends all day, every day on social media, but it's one of those things where you can invest a few minutes at a time on a regular basis, and it really will pay off. But some time does have to be spent on these channels in order for them to be effective. Otherwise, they won't be. So one way in which you can increase your efficiency in using social media is to use some form of automation. And by no means, again, I am not advocating that you set your social media channels on automation, because things can go wrong with that, and we'll talk about that. But it is extremely useful if you want to make a well-curated channel that has a consistent brand message to be able to schedule some things out. You can take photos ahead of time. You can do the same thing on the same day every week. I'll show you some firms that do that. Works really, really well. And that means that you can do these things in advance, and then you don't have to be on there at that given time. You have a meeting, okay, well, you're not missing that Facebook post, whatever it is that you had planned on doing. And a lot of these are even, we talked about Hootsuite here, but there's features that are within each platform that you can use for automation at this point. Everyone except for Instagram. Facebook has a feature where you can schedule posts in advance. You can do the same thing with Twitter, and I think firms just need to use it more often. We asked about marketing budgets. So here's the great thing. Social media is free. Yes, you can use it. You can use paid campaigns. But again, it's not taking up a significant amount of the budget. Also, these stats include time. So that's labor expense is included in this, and that's why I think we even have that 33% on 1 to 5% of the marketing budget. So we asked, how are AEC firms measuring success on social media? So it's important, if you're trying to do well, to know what it is that you're measuring. And there's a variety of ways you can measure your success on social media that I think is not just, did we get a job off social media, which I think you actually can at this point. If you do it right, it may take some time. But most common way is just looking at reach. So that's how many people you're connected to, how many followers you have, how many likes you have, how many people are subscribing to your channel. And then second is looking at that engagement piece. So if you post something on Facebook, how many likes does it get? How many people comment? What's your engagement level? Again, strangely, it's an area where firms are saying, okay, look, this got this many likes, but they're still not liking anybody else's stuff. So it's kind of a one-way street there. 27% are looking at conversions and actions, so that's, somebody signs up for something or contacts them about actually doing work. 8% of firms are not tracking anything, which I think I'm actually surprised. That number has gone way down this year, and it's great. I think more firms are paying attention to it. So these are just a few of the most common social media platforms here. And I think it's important to note that you cannot craft one message and then put it out there on every platform and expect the same message to do well. There's a different audience on each of these social media platforms. There's a different way that people interact with it as well. And you need to be customizing your message, or maybe even posting some different things on each of these channels. So you can't take one photo and then put it on every single social media channel every time. It doesn't work. I've worked for a firm before, and they're saying, oh, okay, well, you need to post a notice on the Instagram that the timing of this has changed. And I'm like, hey guys, the platform doesn't work that way. You're not gonna post, oh, the timing of this workshop has been changed to 2:30 p.m. on your Instagram. That's something that works really well on Twitter. It might work on Facebook a little bit too, but each of these things is different. Facebook, I think it really is great for defining the culture and personality of your firm. That's because you can post photos on it. You can do some longer descriptions within your post. You can share things from the blog, and it shows up as a nice little preview there. I'm seeing Facebook be used less and less, especially by the younger generations. So I think more people, I hate to kind of generationally stereotype here, but I think older people are getting on Facebook more and spending more time on there. Younger people are less so. They're using these other platforms. LinkedIn, definitely I would say the most professional of the social media channels. Definitely aids in your brand positioning. Definitely most recruiting focused. AEC industry loves recruiting use in social media. Twitter, news and updates. So if you're posting something on Twitter, it's really not, you can do some little snippets about like some cultural things and fun things that your firm is doing, but it's not a great place to post a lot of pictures. It just doesn't work well for that. So really short snippets, things with hashtags. So using the hashtags correctly, Twitter is searchable. So if you do go to an event, little short snippet using that correct hashtag of, hey, we're here and we're using the same hashtag everybody else is, means when somebody clicks on that, they'll scroll through and be able to see your firm or whatever you've posted show up as well. Works really well at trade shows. We actually had some data that showed that firms are using social media super effectively at trade shows. Like 87% are being able to bring people to their booth through their use of social media. So kind of interesting. Instagram is totally image focused. So I am still really surprised that our industry has not embraced Instagram more, because everything we do is generally working on things that can photograph really well. I mean, the thing that's so cool about Instagram is you can take photos of people, and you can also take photos of buildings. You can take photos of a blade of grass with a flower, and people will love it. And I just feel like there's such an incredible amount of content that could be used in the work that we all do here that people just are not taking advantage of. And I'll show you some of that later too. And then the last little bit is some of these more specialty sites like Pinterest or House. Very useful if you are in things like residential architecture, interior design, things like that. But it can also be used for those civil engineers out there, and I'll show you in some ways in which that is being done. It's surprising. The way that House and Pinterest work is people are saving boards, which are collections of images, so they're still relatively image-based. But that links right back to your website. And so if you get something, a good viral image on one of those platforms, then, I mean, that could potentially be bringing hundreds, if not thousands of people to your website. If you've got a good website, then you may convert. And again, it's just about the numbers and being able to do that on the regular. Okay, so I'm going to show you some specific examples here, and pardon, I'm going to have to go from the main screen to the web browser, so hopefully that'll all work seamlessly. Just, you know, I'm going to go kind of across the whole industry here, so bear with me on this. We'll start with Instagram. One of my favorite Instagrams is Blackburn Architects, and I'll show you that here. Nope, of course that one didn't come up. Oh, okay. Well, I'll show you it on this main part of my keynote. So, if you all don't know me, I am like a major horse person. I'm obsessed. I have horses. I live on a horse farm. I love it. I love everything to do with farm architecture as well. And so Blackburn, you know, initially obviously drew me in because they have a reputation of building the absolute best equestrian properties in the world. But their marketing shows it, and it's become a viral brand. It's the same. It's actually become a brand where if Blackburn puts out sweatshirts that say Blackburn, he sells them out immediately because the work itself has such a reputation that horseback riders want to show up to a show with a Blackburn sweatshirt. It's really been amazing the way he's been able to do this with the brand. John Blackburn is the CEO of this company. And the marketing that they do is all about putting you in the moment. So when you look at these pictures, they're beautiful, but they're completely real. Most of it is not staged, and it's actually showing the properties that they've developed in use by the occupants, which are mostly horses, but also people. So you can see here of just the wide variety of work that they do. They do work in all different climates. And they do renovations, they do barns, they do indoor riding rings, they do full site plans. This is an image of a farm they did in Montana, and there's snow on the ground. This is California, it's hot and sunny outside. But also just focusing on those details. So again, you don't need to have a picture of a beautiful finished project. This right here was taken during construction, and he's just focusing on the fact that they decided to use this type of water hydrant and why. And in the post description, he explains why they chose this and why it was important. And it's still a beautiful image, like from a photography standpoint. It has good color, it has good structure, things of that nature. But it's really being able to dive into those details, and it promotes the firm and the brand because you can see that they care about every single tiny detail. And here's just an example caption. So every time, every caption, every photo, it focuses on the use. Another example, so this is a service industry, a marketing company, Limelight. And what I thought was really cool about what they were doing is, these are still really real pictures. I mean, this is just like a candid at an event, but they're interspersing it with these color blocks that are kind of more general descriptions about the firm. And it's not like overt selling. It's just explaining why they're doing what they're doing. It's not too flowery or anything like that, but they keep interspersing their entire Instagram feed with these color blocks so that when you bring it up on your phone, the entire page itself is branded. It's not just photos like this. You see these, and these are their signature colors, and they're interspersed throughout the whole thing. And let me pull up another firm that's done a good job with that, WGI. So if I zoom out, this is WGI's Instagram, you can see that they're doing the exact same thing. So you look at it as a whole, it looks like a brochure, but it's not. There's actually just real photos, and these are real employees, and some of them are kind of silly, but they keep interspersing these same brand elements throughout everything that they're doing on the page. There's a variety of other things at WGI. I could speak for hours on all of the different things that they do, but it's focusing on the people. It's using hashtags correctly. It's doing some of the same activities at the same times every week. I think that you guys do something like every Tuesday that's like a thought for the Tuesday, and that's some of these same posts like this. So getting to know everybody there at the firm, showing off a little bit of their individual personalities, but still focusing on the overall brand. Now we're going to switch gears, going over to Facebook. So this is a firm that just makes modular homes, not totally in the AEC industry, but they have an incredibly successful Facebook page. And I think that if you can do this with tiny modular homes, you can do it with almost anything. The things that I think that they do really well are, and you can feel free to pull up any of these pages or any other pages if you want while I talk. Well, one thing to note immediately is they've got over 23,000 followers. That's pretty significant, especially for a product that I would say a very small percentage of the population is actually going to be able to use or enjoy. A lot of people are not in a position to purchase a tiny modular home, but they're fun to look at, and they definitely get a ton of work off of this page. Viral sharing, because the photos that they have, people share and they're like, hey, I want to live in a place like this. Hey, this looks really cool. The other thing that they do is if you look at their captions and the way in which they speak about things, it shows their personality, it shows their brand, and it's connecting with the customers. Like this one says, this one goes out to everybody having a relaxing weekend in their Kanga cabin. You're the real MVP. And then it just gives a little description of the actual project. And they show stuff that's under construction or rough, and then also ones that people have been living in. It's kind of cool. The other thing that they do is they've taken advantage of the power of their reviews. So if you can get a client to review you on Facebook, it really is gold. Those recommendations and then having those reviews there, because it's real. It brings it to a more personal level. And a lot of people now are getting on their phones before they work with someone, Googling them. One of the first thing that pops up right after your website is going to be your firm's Facebook page. And an area where people go very quickly after that is looking at the reviews. It's important for recruiting, but it's also important for clients that may work with you. And I don't think that that is going away. Twitter. So there's someone in the industry, and you guys may know him, Sam Schwartz. He has really embraced the power of Twitter to give daily, near constant updates. So what he did is, Sam Schwartz, CEO, Sam Schwartz Engineering, but he really follows the traffic of New York City. And every time there is any kind of traffic congestion or road closure, things of that nature, he immediately tweets it many, many times a day. So you can go to his Twitter feed at any point in time and know what the traffic is doing in New York City. He's made himself extremely useful. It's a very strong brand. So you can see he has some branding elements on his page. But this is who he is. He passionately cares about traffic. And it just totally comes through on the social media channel. Yes, it is a lot of work, but I'm sure it's paid off tenfold. Just very, very cool. And you can see, again, he's got 12.3 thousand followers. This is pretty good. He's near 15,000 tweets now. LinkedIn. So I'm not going to get into your personal LinkedIn pages, but I will just say interaction is important. Comment, share your viewpoint, interact with people that you work with, interact with your colleagues even. Gensler has a curated company page, and I just think they've done a really great job. Obviously, it's a global firm, but 164,000 followers. That's pretty powerful. And the things that I really liked about what they've done with their page is that they've tried to use all of the features that LinkedIn has to offer. So LinkedIn is a little bit more of a complex platform there. It's not just like a Twitter where you post something and you leave it up there. You can do things like use their slide share option, share slides, and those get kind of put off into an own searchable world of their own. You also can do another, like slideshows of photos within your page, and they actually did that here. And I think that they've done a really good job with the branding of it too, where you can see even, there's a variety of different images here, and it's, people and structures and things like that, but this color here is the same as this color here, is the same as this color here, and I know that that's on purpose. It's just those little subtle reminders that the brand are just consistently spread throughout their page. Just very cool stuff. Pinterest. So it's a little bit hard to put your stuff up on Pinterest. I will admit that. Like, there's some manual work involved when you want to actually post a photo. It's harder than doing, just an Instagram post or something like that. But I hear from a lot of firms, oh, there's no point. We shouldn't be on Pinterest. Like, that's just for people are looking at their wedding hairstyles, or like what my colors are going to be for this, or things like that. But I think it's surprising. I thought, okay, what's like the most boring, cut and dry, civil engineering type thing I could think of to plug into Pinterest? So I plugged in drainage ditches. And believe it or not, there were actually hundreds of images and links on Pinterest relating to drainage ditches. This is what came up. And it's everything. I mean, it's like creating beautiful drainage ditches in front of residential homes. It's like serious how-to videos, linking back to firms' websites on different things that they're doing. A lot of these images are beautiful, and some of them are like super industrial, hardcore engineering stuff. And you would be surprised. I looked it up this morning. I think there's like 150 million people on Pinterest. It's crazy. It's really something that could be taken advantage of, because each one of these images gets liked, gets shared. The really crazy thing about Pinterest is every time you can have settings so that every time somebody even repins, basically they're saving these are called pins, by the way, saving like one of these images, you can get notified. These things can get spread around the internet pretty quickly, and all of them link back to your site if you set it up correctly. So it's an opportunity to get a lot of traffic. House is another one that's like that. Now this is a little bit more complex. This is a little bit more expensive. The other ones are all free. This does have a paid element. I will say probably most useful if you're doing more residential style architecture, but I'm still surprised at how many firms are not taking advantage of it. Same thing with just tons of people that are on this that are looking through these types of images. And if you tag them correctly, people can be searching for things and they can find you on it. And I just think it's an opportunity that if it makes sense for you, you should totally do it, because it's getting a lot of traffic, and these sites are being used more and more by people that are doing projects, because it's such a convenient way to put together a lot of options. Okay. So we're going to kind of come back to this core value discussion. It's kind of bringing it full circle from what Steve was talking about. So we talked about as you regenerate your brain, your core values don't change. So now we're going to kind of turn this into a little bit more interactive, and I want everybody to actually think about the answers to these questions here. I'll leave them up for a second if you want. Take a few notes, discuss. Yeah, I can send them to you after this presentation. Okay, so in light of the previous questions, which I can bring back up, if everybody could just make a list of your top 3 differentiators.
So on the Steve Thomas Builders side, the 3 differentiators are very personal attention to quality and detail. I show up you hire me to build or renovate your house, I'm there every day. 2 is knowledge and experience to tackle very challenging projects, including logistically challenging projects. We do projects on islands that require, normally, I've talked to subcontractors say, so you're going to get a helicopter? No. You're going to do this with a crane? No. Because the client, we just recently did a project for the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, and he didn't want a crane, even though we should have had a crane. So we had to, because he didn't want the hoopla. So we had to do it. And he didn't want a big crew, and he didn't want big barges. He just didn't want to draw attention. We built him a little timber frame study that's really beautiful. It's really gorgeous. So we had to do it all by hand and figure out a way to do that cost effectively. So I can do that. And third would be the depth of experience and the knowledge base in the industry to value engineer even big complex projects. I'm glad we went through that, because now I got to add that. Now I got to tweet that.
Anybody else want to share?
All right, anybody else? Okay.
A little bit different than Steve's, but not a completely. I think the 3 things, if you had to pick 3 that's allowed us to be successful and to distinguish ourselves from the pack in some extent, is communication. We focus every day on how we communicate, internally, externally, and as scientists and engineers, we're not genetically predisposed to be good communicators. So we have to work on that, and it helps us. The second thing is an investment culture, and Christy alluded to it a little bit. We invest a lot in branding and marketing, but we invest a lot in people, and we invest a lot in technology. There's some risk associated with that. In our case, it's more than paid off, so that investment culture. And then finally, the thing that everybody will tell you, but we actually mean it, because you don't get to work at WGI unless you mean it, and that's paying attention to the quality of your work. And if you don't do QC on your plans, you've worked your last day at WGI. It's an inviolate rule we have. So those 3 things, I think, have really helped us distinguish ourselves.
Okay. Communication, a lot of good ideas here. Who else wants to share? Okay.
Okay, so we actually went through a strategic planning effort this year, so this is kind of easy for me to come up with. I would say number 1 on the list is the amount of repeat work we get at our firm. It's well over 85% of our work is repeat clients. We don't have to do a lot of marketing. We do market, but the phone rings and we don't have to put a lot of effort into it a lot. So that's great. anytime anyone asks one of our employees why they like to work for our company, it's either the first or the second answer is the people. We just have a really great group of engineers and architects and support staff, and there's rarely a day where you don't want to come to work because the people we work with are great. And then the third thing I listed, which is one of the most important things to me personally about our firm, is we have an emphasis on collaboration with an entire project team. So when we first start collaborating, obviously with the owner, but then when we get into the construction side of the project, our engineers and our inspectors show up on a job site willing to work with the builder. And if a builder has an idea on how to do something better, we don't say, no, it's not on my idea, we can't do it that way. If it's a better way to construct it and it saves time or money for the client or the contractor, and it doesn't violate any codes, we're more than willing to work with those people to do that. And that's one of our core goals, is to not show up on the job site with such a big head that you can't admit that maybe you didn't come up with the best way to do it. So.
Okay. Repeat business. Anybody else? Yes.
All right. I struggled with this a little bit because there's the company's differentiators, and then on the marketing side, we also look at on a project-specific one for a specific client. So it depends on what we'd be looking at. So the ones for the company, what I had was doing what's right, which sounds simple, but it really goes back to our culture of investing in our people through continued education, investing in our communities by that community give back, investing or just being there for our clients on a continual basis to get the job done right. And it also goes into just even why we were, or one of Mead, when he founded the company, he wrote a paper on ethics that still stands for the engineering industry. So I think the doing what right is critical, and it also speaks to our culture that even though we're becoming a large firm, we still have that small firm, family-like feel. The second one that I had was relationships, which is closely related, but the way that our staff operates is really building those relationships with clients. We have a very strict go, no-go process. We need to make sure that we're really knowing what our clients need, and that's talking to them, getting to know their needs, making sure that we're addressing them appropriately. And then the last one is versatility. And I put that in there because we started as a water firm, and now we're full service AE, and we continually to diversify our services, which you can say, all right, that's all in-house services, but at the same time, I think that versatility applies to getting our clients the services they need, even if we're going out of house for that. So being versatile with the markets, versatile with budgets, versatile with the needs of our clients.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So the point of this exercise was not just to torture everybody. My point of this is that those things that you come up with, first of all, I've done this before and everybody's shared. I've made them like all say 3 words and we hear the same words over and over. So everybody does need to work hard to, this point here, coming up with things that nobody else can, really figuring out what makes your firm stand out. But those should be on all of everything you do, all of your marketing materials, and that includes your social media. So if somebody can't possibly guess one of your core differentiators or something by looking at your social media or the other marketing materials you put out, then you're not doing your job. That's the point of this, is you need to find those things and then don't be afraid to say them, but you can say them in a lot of different ways. And that's what's so awesome about having all these different platforms, doing different things on them, is finding different ways to tell that story. So maybe it's a really awesome video like Steve had about, looking at seals in Maine, and maybe it's drone footage of a project, and maybe it's an image of one of your employees holding a funny sign. There's so many ways you can tell that story. Okay, and now we'll have a Q&A. Any questions?
On Instagram, so we're looking into using this. We currently primarily use LinkedIn and Twitter for our social media. We have a little bit of Facebook presence. But on Instagram, is there a handle on how many companies are opening it up to their employees so it's not I mean, maybe it's monitored by corporate, but like, are they requesting images internally from a recruiting standpoint? And I guess I was curious and maybe throwing out to the audience too.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I've seen and what works is, I think it's nice if you have more than one person who can contribute to the Instagram, but like not more than 3. I'm not, there may be different rules on those numbers based on how large your firm is and how many offices you have and how many things you're focusing on. But you do need to have one person at your firm that controls the brand and the brand strategy. And that's somebody who's going to be able to give a very, very quick go, no go on something. Immediately will know, yes, this fits within our brand standards. Yes, this is okay. Should not have to go to a vote. You should never have multiple people being like, oh, yes, I approve this, but it needs to go to Bob too. And I've seen that happen. That's not a good idea. But I think that you will have to get a variety of perspectives on that as well. So like what we do is we have one person who's in charge of posting things, and everybody will send them images and even suggested captions, because if they're not in the moment, they don't know what's going on. You need to get that caption from the person that's at the project or at the event. And maybe need to wordsmith it a little bit or fix somebody's grammar, but the sentiment needs to come from being in that place in that moment. Anybody else want to share their experiences with that?
Okay. You also might want to have a style book, too, for social media within your organization. So if you create a style book, then that style book you give to all your employees and say, hey, this is how we use things. If you want to post something on Instagram, here are the appropriate hashtags we'd like you to use. So like for this event, we're using everything hashtag HotFirm 2018, hashtag. We have several other hashtags. We knew what those were before we came down here. So you want to create a style book for your team to use so that everybody has a playbook to work from, so that nobody's off the reservation, if you will, trying to figure out what to say or how to say it. And then that way, if anybody on their own, through their own Instagram, wants to post a picture or a video or whatever, they can use those appropriate hashtags and then at your firm to link to you guys. And what? Yeah, that is. Right. It looks not quite. Not. It's the reason why I have 990304 coded into my head, because that's the Zweig color red. I know it by heart. You just put in the hashtag 990304 and we're good to go. No matter what, it's going to look right. So.
Just like everything we do, you have to have QC in your social media. We have a 24/7 social media person. That's all she does. I think she has the coolest job in the firm. But she doesn't have the technical ability to understand everything that people write. So we need to make sure somebody is looking at it and reviewing the copy. The technical people need to start by writing the copy, and then somebody needs to make sure it makes sense. The second thing is you have to be careful with your enthusiasm over something that's really great and how you use it in social media. We had an example about a month ago where we did a really cool mobile scan of Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale for the Army Corps of Engineers. It was really cool. It showed the bottom. You could see beer bottles on the bottom. You could see the seawall. You could see boats in the harbor. You could see above the harbor. Really cool stuff. Only one problem. We posted it on Facebook at like 5:30 on Friday night. I saw it and called them and said, take it down, because there's a huge security issue with posting this video of this mobile scan in a major port in the United States. We were really enthusiastic because it was really freaking cool, but we just couldn't put it on social media. And I'm sure the Corps, they didn't see it. They would not have appreciated it had they had.
And that's where a style book would come into play, because you say, hey, idea about, you put parameters for posting any type of image, video, all of that, and make sure that the proper channels are all approved before anything goes up online. Did you have something? Did you raise your hand? No? Okay, I'm sorry. Who else raised their hand? Did you guys want to share something? Right here?
Hi, I'm Katie Mudd with RLG, and I just thought it was really interesting that video and YouTube isn't used as much in our industry, considering that YouTube is like the second largest search engine. So people go to Google and then they go to YouTube. And so those tracking and the descriptions with your video can help draw traffic back to your website. So I'm just curious why people don't take more advantage of YouTube. But of course, we haven't quite done that ourselves, so I'm preaching to the choir. But just curious on your thoughts of how we could better utilize YouTube.
I think that video creation, and we've got our own amazing video person back there, Margot, and she may want to share some thoughts on this as well. I also wanted to introduce her because if you guys have any specific questions about creating videos for your firm or the way things should look during the second part of this, please talk with her. She is an incredible wealth of information, and she makes things that are unbelievable. And if you show up tomorrow, you'll see her work. It's outstanding. But aside from that, I think that it is a bit time consuming sometimes to do those uploads, but you're totally right. The searchability of YouTube is incredible. And especially when you come to really technical things, like just making a short how-to or here's what we're doing on this project, it's if you're using the right words and writing enough of a description, that could get significant traffic. But the missing piece of that, and I mean, I see it happen in our own firm, is that people don't think about what happens then. So if you do post something on YouTube, you need to make sure that it is titled properly, that it's described properly, that you ideally have a link in the description that goes back to your website or something else. You can't just post a video from, Zweig Group or ABC firm, and then here we are on this project and it's fun, cool, done. You have to have what happens next. There has to be a connection to either the website or a person. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of people fail on that, a lot of firms, is even if they do it, nothing happens. It sits there, then it gets like 3 views and dead end.
I knew you were going to make me. I've seen some, there are some. So we did that drone competition. So we did the drone competition, and do you want to talk about that real quick and just tell them just the synopsis of how that came about and the firms that participated in that, just briefly? It's Donovan Brigham, everybody.
Yeah, for the magazine Civil Plus Structural Engineer, we did a drone video contest of the year, and the firm that ended up winning was ECS, or a company that worked with ECS. I'm sorry, I forgot the actual question. A company that is doing it well. Yeah, and I think ECS would be a great example. They went out and had an aerial photography and videography company, video their project and make all the aerial videos, and that was what was entered into the competition that won.
And to piggyback on that, the not just the ECS video, but several other, we've seen a lot of different firms that storytell through YouTube videos, and that's another way for you to do it. And you could tell a story about an engineer or an architect or a landscape architect or somebody at your firm and kind of walk them through some of the different things that those individuals do. That's a great way to tell people about your company and about what you do. That can be used as a recruiting tool. It can be used a number of different ways. The idea is that you want to create really good video. You want to keep it short and sweet. Highly recommend that you caption your videos because 73% of all videos are listened to without sound. I don't know how many of you guys have sat at your desk looking at videos and you're reading the captions and you're not listening to it. Trust me, 73% YouTube, this is something that came directly from YouTube, watch videos without the sound on. So don't, if you're going for the Dolby effect and George Lucas and all that stuff, that's great, but honestly, you just want to have high quality video, and that will serve its purpose. Here we go.
And I can kind of add on to that as well. We had a project that was completed that we had a drone company come out and film, and we have been able to reuse that content multiple times. Because the best thing about having content that you spend a lot of time on is you're getting your money's worth out of it. So you can have it on YouTube, you can put it on your website, you can have it as a banner, you can put it on Facebook, on Instagram, and you have other ways to use it other than just putting it on YouTube. Like, you want to link yourself as many times as possible. So, yeah. Drone video is awesome. I did want to have, like, a little discussion. We all, for the most part, work with engineers, right? And architects, and kind of the more black and white people in the industry. Whereas we see in... Okay, all right, I'm creative. And trying to explain social media to people that do not want to do it, it's really tough. So how do you guys get your employees really excited about it? Because I'm like, hey, let's grab a photo together for PE day. Let's do a scavenger hunt. Let's do all of these fun things. How do you get them to be engaged? Because a lot of people have this issue. Me.
Anybody want to add to that? That's a great question. It starts at the top. I mean, you guys hire, I think I hate, we keep using WGI as an example, but they have a full-time, my thing that I've told firms, because firms have asked me all the time, well, what should we do about improving our positioning when it comes to recruitment and retention and all this other stuff? Hire a social media person. Yes, they're not going to have any utilization whatsoever. So get that out of your head, because that's the first thing that goes to everybody's mind. What's the bottom line? Can I utilize this person on projects? Well, yeah, kind of in a roundabout way you can. And maybe if you want to figure out a way to charge your client for a beautiful video, you could then utilize that person in some way, shape, or form. But if you move beyond that and just say, you know what, I'm going to earmark $40,000 or $50,000 for a high quality social media person, and there are plenty of them out there. And you're talking about Maddie, right? I mean, Maddie's amazing. I know her personally. She's absolutely amazing. She doesn't come from this industry, but she understands social media. And once you get past that part of it and just are willing to make the investment, everything else starts opening itself up, because you, the practitioner, you guys do what you do really, really well. You need somebody that does social really, really well, because you're trying to wear 6 different hats at the same time, and it really doesn't work. And I think you'd be better off trying to find somebody that can come in, capture the essence of your culture and your organization, and they get it, and then say, okay, now that you understand who we are, go forth and let the world know, because that's important.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just the social media. It really goes back to the investment culture, and it's scalable, so you don't start as large perhaps as we are. We have 30 people in our creative marketing group that are all non-billable people. And the guy that runs the creative side of that group came from the advertising world. We intentionally didn't hire anybody that was related to our business, because we wanted this guy to come in and be provocative, be a little edgy. And we sell these services to others as well. We could actually sell a lot more. We just don't have time because they're so busy supporting us. But the whole team is really designed to be outside the A&E world. They understand what we do, but they come with ideas. And we actually want them to sell their services, because that keeps that creative side going in their world. We put them in a different building adjacent to our corporate office and let them buy any furniture they want. And it's the funkiest place you could ever go. It's really cool. And if I get stressed out at work, I'll walk over there and hang out with creative for 15 or 20 minutes. But you got to make that investment in that group.
Just on the, I was just going to say, just on the tips for getting staff excited about social media, we run into that problem all the time, and it can be a tiresome job, but it's being consistent with it, I guess. And hitting a number of different mediums for getting it out there. So we use our intranet. We'll do a 3 Things Thursday video and say, hey, if you like, share, all this other stuff, just something short, brief, a video they can watch internally. We've done in-house trainings of people that are in marketing, market leader type positions, business development, trying to get them excited about that. We've done what I do. We have an orientation for all new hires, and as soon as they come in the door, that is one of the things that I ingrain on them is you really need to, you can really help our ratings by hitting like and sharing and, sending it across to your connections. And I will say you get some of those entry-level ones, that's huge, just because they're used to social media, they grew up with it, but hitting all levels of the organization and just making it very simple for them to, that like and share in and of itself is huge. The other thing that I was going to say too is, and I totally lost my train of thought there, but I think we were talking about video and stuff like that of how you can leverage it. We used it for our CEO announcement and combined it with the blogs. We've been really going down the path of looking at doing more vlogs and making it a little bit more interactive, and that was a huge success for getting it shared out there. And then we talked about our culture and items like that in comparison. We've done that on our food and beverage side too, but for video successes, I guess.
Thank you. Mitch, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to speak to the question of how do you get your staff involved. We've actually, we're a firm of 130. We have about 6 in our marketing department, and one of those is a content specialist, and she handles our social media. But at one point, we went so far as to give photography lessons in each of our offices to our engineers, because you'd be amazed, how many pictures we get with the rear view mirror in the picture. They send it to us and they think, oh, this is a great picture to post. Well, no, it's not. It's got the rear view mirror. So we've done that, and then I talk about it a lot with our firm. And I've tried to foster the idea that, they can set themselves apart on their individual social media pages as industry experts and really push that. But really, if you get them to the point where they're taking pride in their projects and they're actually thinking of it as I'm showing off my work with the firm, that can be a real powerful thing as well.
Anybody else? I like that idea, Mitch, too. So.
I was just going to say that I agree that appealing to the personal brand building aspect of it can be effective as far as getting people to promote their presentations and different kinds of professional activities like that, and then they start getting the engagement on that, and it does have a tendency to build.
Tell them to embrace their introversion on social media.
I think both of you guys have touched on that. It's all about the interaction piece. And so if you can even post things that your employees are excited about or like, then that expands your audience as well. That's why it's so important. And if all else fails, get a puppy. We did it. We had somebody bring in a puppy, and he became our firm mascot, and it was amazing how many people, even within the firm, had not really been paying attention to our social media, but suddenly they were all over that thing. So, that's just a little silly thing, but sometimes you got to have a little bit of fun with it in a way that is relatable. And I've seen, I think you can get, you want to be within your own, authentic to your true brand. If you're a serious firm, it may not be good to get too silly with it, but you can have some fun with it as well. The other thing too is sometimes just being, sometimes you have to be a little bit covert as a marketer, like literally walking around the office with your phone or a camera and stopping people, saying, what are you doing and why? A couple weeks ago I did that, and we do happy hour every Friday, so people were a little bit more relaxed. And I, just took a couple people and said, can you just take 30 seconds to tell me what you're working on right now? And just a little short video of them, and it was real off the cuff. But it was great. It turned out really well. So you just have to take advantage of the timing on those things. And it doesn't always have to be a huge production. I think you can get really good work sometimes with literally 15 minutes of cell phone video, sometimes even less.